Hello there, my name is Ismail and welcome to another exciting Blender tutorial, and today we're going to be looking at how to create this wall destruction effect using Blender 2.8. And yeah, let's just look at this in different angles. You can see we have particles going off everywhere and blocks this wall being destructed. So let's get started. I'll open up a new Blender file here. So I'll add my wall here. Just scale this on the axis, in the x-axis. Also move it. You want to texture this before you start doing anything. So I'm just going to apply the scale and rotation. Use it, unwrap this, and use it, unwrap, and then start texturing. So I'm going to subdivide this and change this to shader editor. Apply a new material to this, and let me find a texture to use here. Image texture. Just find something simple to use. I'm just going to use, let me use this texture here. Preview this. Okay, come on. Okay. Scale the UVs a bit, and maybe use this as the roughness and the bump map here. Just going to add a vector bump node here, like that. Reduce the strength there, and I would add a convert math node just to play around with the to have some bit of control over the roughness. I think that's okay. This is not a texturing tutorial, so I won't dwell on that too much. So now we want to do is start working on the particle system. So let's go to the particle system and add a new particle system. If we play back, let me reduce the timeline to about 100 frames. If we play back, you can see that all the particles are just falling down. We don't want that. We want to have control over how these particles, how and when these particles start moving. So let's go under the field weights and turn off the gravity, as that's one of the forces that is adding to the motion of the particles. And also go to the physics tab. So under velocity, turn on the normal velocity, and you should have the particles just be there in one position. I also want all the particles to be emitted at the first frame, and have a lifetime of 100, which is the length of our timeline. And yes, this is what we want. So go to edit mode and subdivide this mesh a few times, because we're going to be using the explode modifier. So go under modifier and add an explode modifier. This will only work if you have a particle system, and this should break up your mesh into different pieces. And if you turn on cut edges, it will also start cutting through edges like that, and that's kind of randomize the effect just a bit. Right now there is nothing happening here because we don't have any force acting on these particles. So what we are going to do is add field force. Let's start with a turbulence. I'll just put it around here, and can see that will kind of add a turbulence force to the particles, and the entire mesh will start moving around. I don't want to see these particles there, so I'll go to the particle settings, and under render I will turn off the particles, set the render as to none so that I only see the particles. I also want to have some rotation in the particles, so I'll go under rotation, turn on rotation, and turn on dynamic. Now you can see now we have some bit of rotation in the particles, and I'll also turn on some angular velocity, not too much. 1 is enough. You can see we have some random movement, some random rotation. Okay, but right now the turbulence is acting on all pieces of the wall at once. I want to have control over what particles move. So let's go under select the turbulence I'll just change the shape of the turbulence. This is just for visual representation, it doesn't really affect anything. So let's go to the force, to the physics tab, and play around with the turbulence settings. The first thing we want to have is this, set some fall off for this so that we don't affect the entire particle system at once. So if you go under fall off, you can set a maximum distance. So let me set a maximum distance, or say 1, and you can see only the pieces inside this fall off will be affected by the turbulence. And if I start animating this turbulence force, so I can have it start from this corner. Let me set a keyframe there and go up to this corner, maybe move that up a bit like that. You can see what we are having. Our problem is, let's reduce our turbulence, our fall off just a bit. Okay, let me increase this, something like that. And to give this wall some thickness, let's go under the physics, the modifiers, and add a solidify modifier and the explode modifier. So let's add that. You can see we have now we have some thickness. And if we play back, you can see. Let me just increase the thickness just a bit. And what I'm going to do is add another material for this thickness. So just add a new material here and give it a base color of something like that. And now I can go under the modifiers and turn on and give the rim here a different material like that. So when we play back, you can see this is what we are getting. The problem we're having is that these particles are now just floating around in the air, which is not more realistic, which is not as realistic as what we have feared falling down. So to have that, what we're going to do is I'm just going to add another force. And because we turned off gravity here in the particle system, field weights, I can see they're just floating around. If I try setting the gravity back to 1, first turn on the keyframes, the entire block falls down because the gravity affects the entire world and not just somewhere in these. Yeah, so what we're going to fake the gravity effect by duplicating or by adding another force. So I'll add, let's add wind. Again, by default, it will just affect the entire 3D space. So we also want it to have some fall off. And so let's go under the physics tab and turn on the maximum fall off. And if we increase this, you can see only these areas are being affected. Let's see. Okay, it seems that we need the, let's see. Okay, if you see that the entire block like this horizontal block is being affected, go under settings and change the shape from plane to point. That way only the parts in the radius of the fall off are affected. You can see now. And if I increase, this is happening because of the cache baking. Let's just play it back. You can see only the objects or particles within the fall off of the wind are being affected by the wind. And we want the wind to fake our gravity, so I'll rotate it on the x-axis by 180 degrees, so that is facing the direction of where gravity would normally face. And I can see now we have blocks falling down. Problem is the force is not enough, so let me just increase that by a bit. Let's see, 10. Great. Now they're falling directly down, but only the particles within the fall off. So what I'm going to do is parent this to our turbulence so that it follows our turbulence like that. I'm also going to increase the fall off distance and maybe move it closer to our turbulence. Let me move. Where is my fall off? Okay, so something like that. And right now they're just falling directly through the wall. So what I'm going to do is rotate this force the wind just a bit, so we have some bit of, so that they are not falling directly into the wall. So yeah, something like that. And I think I can reduce the force to about, the strength to about 5, maybe. Let's keep it at 10. Great. I'm also going to add a ground like that, and let me give it a darker material so that it's easier to see. Something like that. And also go to the physics tab and give it a collision property so that the particles can bounce off it, but I don't want them to bounce that far, so I'll just increase the damping and randomize it, also increase the friction, and to have them stick on the ground I'll just give them, the stickiness, I'll increase the stickiness just a bit. Maybe let me put it at 1. And we have something like that. Let me increase the noise here, just so we randomize our wind just a bit. Great. Let me continue giving this a bit of an angle, and select the particles again and go under the particle settings. Let me add, what should I add here? There's rotation. Let me just increase the angular rotation here, angular velocity just a bit, and to have them rotate a little bit faster like that. I still don't want them to bounce, so let me increase the stickiness and maybe the friction, also damping, yeah, something like that. Let me reduce this. Yeah, so I think that's good enough. Now you can see if you wanted to change this, you can just keyframe this to a different position, and I should still, and the motion should update. Great, something like that. And now we just need to add in a few more particles. I can add another emitter here, so select the turbulence, Shift S to move the cursor there, and then add something like a cube. Scale it down. This is going to be our new emitter to emit extra particles, just to add some realism. You can see these smaller particles that we have there. What we're going to do is add, let's see, a new particle system for this. If we play back, you get that. Let's parent it to the to our turbulence so that it moves with our turbulence. And I think the first thing we should do is add a smoke or dust to this particle system before we add these extra particles. So what we're going to do is add a mesh cube, and this is going to be our domain. So I'll scale it to enclose our scene like that. Maybe expand it just a bit, and go to the physics tab, turn on smoke, give it a smoke type, smoke property, and give it a type of domain. This is going to be our domain, and now we can select the cube, give it a smoke property, and the type is going to be flow, and we want the flow to be the smoke to be emitted from the particle system. So change the flow source to particle system and select the particle system we have just added. You won't see anything because we haven't set up the material, so select the domain and create a new material. We don't need the principal shader, we just want the principal volume. So connect the volume output to the volume input of the material output, and we should have something. You can see now, can just change the color of the smoke. Now if we go to rendered, let me add some background lighting, environment, HDRI, use this, let's give this also change this, remove this keyframe, turn off keyframe recording, set this as a sun. I'll give this a value of, let's say, 10. Yeah, I think that's good enough. I'll rotate this. You can also go to the render settings and turn on, under volumetrics, turn on volumetric shadows. And I think this is a bit too saturated, so let's try, I think, something around there. You can see we have our let me see what's going on here. Seems for some reason the particles are stop emitting at some point. I'm not sure why is that. Let's increase the lifetime to about 100, the length of our timeline, and let's see what else can we do here. For the most part, that's it. And now we can also use this particle system that is emitting our the smoke of dust. We can use it as, you can use it to emit or to create extra debris like this. So I'm just going to add a UV sphere, icosphere, and reduce the subdivisions to 1, and just change this a bit. This is going to be our smaller particles. You don't want them to have a lot of vertices or polygons. So for this, we're just going to give it the same material we had above, and now we can select this emitter and go to the particle system and select render as object, and use this as our object instance. We can increase the scale and randomize this, play around with the rotation, angular rotation, maybe this set is to 2. Everything else we can randomize. Make sure if you want to use angular velocity, make sure you have dynamic turned on, otherwise it won't work. We can maybe play around with some of these settings. Right now it's just about experimenting and playing with different things. Yeah, I think they're not going far enough, so I'm just going to increase the velocity. And what you will notice is that we also have some particles being emitted on this side of the wall. Our camera is mostly going to be viewing this from this side or from one side. So what I'm going to do is select this. If I hide everything, select the emitter and delete these faces, back faces. I'm just going to expand this. Now, if you look at the normal direction of our mesh, we just go to overlays. Normal, you can see they're all pointing to this side where our camera is going to be facing. So you can see all our particles are being emitted on this side. So yeah, you can increase particle count. You can see what we are having. What I did also in this version here, what I did is I selected the domain and went to the physics tab and turned on dissolve so that the smoke can dissolve, or the dust can dissolve a little bit faster, and also changed the temperature difference. When you have the temperature difference too high, the smoke or dust rises faster, which is something I didn't find looking very realistic. So what I did is reduced that. Let me first increase the density here so that you can easily see the smoke. You can see, maybe let me increase this even further, something like 5. You can see it's not rising as fast, but if we set this to say something, if we set the temperature difference to about 1, you can see it's rising a little bit faster. You can see how high it's going. But if I set it to about 0.001, see, it's kind of it's not as, it doesn't act as fire or smoke, it acts as dust. The problem is you would have to increase your resolution to see this more realistically, but since I'm recording this, it will just kind of slow down my machine. So I'll leave it, I'll leave the subdivision to about 32 so that we can easily preview this. Let me reduce this density down a bit, something like that. And you can select your emitter and go under the display instancing and turn off display instancer and render instancer so that you don't see them in your viewport. Yeah, we are having some cache issues here where you see this part of the block just falls before our forces act on them. I think, let's see, let me see if that has to do why that is happening. Let me just select these emitters, let's see. Yeah, so sometimes when you have these issues, see, that just falls off before the force comes in, and you can see the particles also just kind of go haywire. What you want to do is try clear the cache of your bake by going into edit mode and tapping out, or move some of the objects around to see that you clear the cache, or scrub your timeline until you see the red line is not continuous, and then play back. This should rebake your cache. You can see now we are experiencing more issues now. Okay, now it's better. Let's see now. Yeah, there's still a lot of bugs in Blender 2.8, especially Blender 2.81. So you might experience some of those bugs as well. You can see if I select these particles, you can see they are playing continuously and normally, but at some frame they start just jetting out different areas where they shouldn't be going. So yeah, you might run into those issues. So basically this is what I did for this here. And that is essentially it. And what I did, I added some camera shake to this to the camera, and yeah, that was it. Thank you for watching.